To get the most out of this video, I want you to do two things. Number one, I want you to go at your own pace. I'm going to be moving pretty quickly through these questions. You are going to need to pause and work on these questions on your own before you see how I solve them. Otherwise, you're not going to get any value from this practice. And number two, there are going to be some subjects that I cover that you don't need to review, and you're going to be wasting your time reviewing them. So take a look down here at the chapters. If you know it's something that you're already really comfortable with and you'd rather spend your time elsewhere, you can skip around and choose just to work on the problem types that you know you've been struggling with. And with those two things in mind, let's get started on our first question. All right, we're going to start with some craft and structure because Rodrigo Flores requested it, and I'm happy to help Rodrigo. So, words in context. The following text is from, I'm not going to read this. I'm going to go straight to the question. What does the word trace mean in the question? So I'm going to find the word trace. It's underlined for me. And we have supper time. Foxfoot would allow no fire to be built, no landing to be made, no trace of their passing to be left. For these types of questions, words in context, it is best to come up with your own answer first. So based on this, it sounds like this Foxfoot character doesn't want anyone to know where they are. So I'm thinking no trace would mean no signs that they were there. That'll be my anticipation. No signs that they were there. If we get down here, we've got evidence. Sounds great. Blemish? No. Amount? Certainly not. Sketch? No. So boom. Evidence. Why? Because it totally matches what I just said with my anticipation, that there's no signs that they were there, no evidence that they were there. Okay, so this one starts with this is because, so I do need to read the first sentence. Many ancient cultures of people's heads are missing their noses. This is because the nose is the most blank part of a sculpture. Okay, so why would they be missing is the question. Whatever this is should answer that. I'm thinking that since they're ancient sculptures, they probably broke off because they were weak. So I'm going to say the most delicate or the weakest is my anticipation. Recognizable? No. Fragile? Totally matches. Common? No. Sophisticated? No. Boom. Fragile. Let's do some potentially more challenging ones here. Which choice completes the text? Okay, the works of Chicana artist Esther Hernandez are now blank in museums both in the United States and abroad, but the murals she contributed as a member of Las Mujeres Muralistas early in her artistic career were displayed in outdoor public spaces across San Francisco. But, so I'm going to use that but to come up with what would come before it because we're trying to contrast with our answer basically. So we want it to contrast with outdoor public spaces across San Francisco are now blank in museums, both United States and abroad. Oh, okay. So outdoor would contrast with just being featured in those museums. So I'm going to think like, oh, well, normally I would eliminate, but I literally see the word featured. That's my answer. All right. And this one, we do have a really long sentence starting at the beginning. So I do have to read through. Whether Carmen Lomas Garza is creating small paintings and illustrations or large public artworks, I'm going to not read this because whenever you see those two dashes, that means this is basically extra detail, non-essential information. So I'm going to ignore it just to get a better idea of what's going on. So basically, when she's creating small paintings or large artworks, she is blank direct experience. Drawing from memories of her childhood in Texas or details. So she is blank direct experience. So if she's drawing from her memories, what is she doing with direct experience? She's using it. She's drawing from her direct experiences. So I'm just going to say she's using or incorporating direct experience. Complemented by, not quite, but I'll keep it around. Uncertain about, no. Unbothered by, no. Inspired by, yes. When I said she's drawing from, she's using, she is inspired by direct experience. Animal researcher Amalia P.M. Bastos led a 2021 study about a wild key parrot that used small stones as tools to preen its feathers. Well, that's cool. Skeptical colleagues had initially suggested to Bastos that the key's interaction with the stones might simply be blank. Okay, so basically they're skeptical, so they think that maybe the the parrot is not actually using the stones as tools, I would say might simply be an accident or might simply be a coincidence. And I'm going to stop reading there because I think I'm good. Intriguing, certainly, but not what we're looking for. Obvious, no. Accidental, yeah. Observable, no. Mary Engel Pennington, a chemist who helped advance home refrigeration, undoubtedly made a substantial impact on society, but her place in our historical memory is perhaps more blank than that of Stephanie Kwolek, who invented the incredibly strong material known as Kevlar, an accomplishment for which she will long be remembered. Okay, this is tough. It's saying that Mary made substantial impact, but her place is more blank than this other person who will long be remembered. So I want a word that means not well remembered. Her place in historical memory is perhaps more, I don't know, I'm going to say like subtle. So we have permanent, no, that's kind of the opposite. Let's actually play a game. Let's say I don't know what tentative means. What do you do when you come across a word that you don't know? Leave it there and eliminate first. So warranted, I know is like it should be happening. So I would get rid of that one. Prominent is obvious, the opposite of subtle, which was my anticipation. So I would get rid of prominent. If you're able to eliminate all the other answers, you can choose the one you don't know. Unfortunately, if you end up with two words you don't know, or you end up with two answers at that point, then you're just going to have to make your best guess if you're not sure what either word means. And in case I forgot to mention it, tentative means like unsure. When you make a tentative plan, you're like, oh yeah, let's tentatively plan to meet up on Friday, but we're not sure if we're actually going to meet up on Friday just yet. All right, next up, we're going to do some structure and purpose questions, starting with number 6 here. So, which states the main purpose of the text? And for these types of questions, I do like to read the whole thing and again come up with my own answer first. The following text is adapted from Gene Webster's 1912 novel Daddy Longlegs. That's a fun title. The narrator is a young college student writing letters detailing her weekly experiences. The college is organizing the freshman basketball team, and there's just a chance that I shall make it. I'm little, of course, but terribly quick and wiry and tough. While the others are hopping about in the air, I can dodge under their feet and grab the ball. So the main purpose, well, it says that the college student is writing letters detailing her weekly experiences. So it doesn't sound like she's writing to someone, but rather for herself. I think the purpose is just to reflect on why she thinks she might actually be good on the basketball team. So to compare basketball with other sports, no. To provide details how to play, no. To state how players will be chosen, no. To explain why she thinks she might make the basketball team. That's literally what I just said. So, boom. All right, so we have another main purpose. In the late 1800s, Spanish language newspapers flourished in cities across Texas. San Antonio alone produced 11 newspapers in Spanish between 1890 and 1900, but El Paso surpassed all other cities in the state. This city produced 22 newspapers in Spanish during that period. El Paso is located on the border with Mexico and has always had a large population of Spanish speakers. Thus, it is unsurprising that this city became such a rich site for Spanish language journalism. It seems like this is all about Spanish language newspapers, and in particular, how prominent El Paso was in the production of Spanish newspapers. So the main purpose would be to explain how El Paso was so prominent with Spanish language journalism. That's what I'm going to say. To compare Spanish language newspapers published in Texas today with ones published there, no. Explain that Spanish language newspapers thrived in Texas, especially in El Paso. Okay, we have especially in El Paso. I like that. I'm going to keep that one. To argue that Spanish language newspapers published in El Paso influenced the ones, no. To explain why Spanish language newspapers, okay, D doesn't even mention El Paso, so boom. My answer is B. All right, I'm moving on to a harder section here. While such amenities were available mainly to town dwellers, okay, so I want to know what the amenities were. Full immersion baths, more affordably steam baths. Okay, while such amenities were available mainly to town dwellers, regular bathing in rivers and streams were common practices. So basically, it sounds like this underlined portion is functioning to say that these fancy things, steam baths, baths, anything other than bathing in the river, basically, were mainly available to people who lived in town versus people who lived elsewhere. That is going to be my anticipation. I want to see if I can get away with not reading the rest of this. It asserts that in medieval Europe, steam baths were more popular in rural areas than urban. No, because in town would be urban. Urban is city, rural is, country. It describes a limitation of earlier historian studies. I don't know about that. It concedes that not all people in medieval Europe had access to public bathhouses. I mean, that's true. I'll leave that one for now. It explains why Janiga decided to study the popularity of public bathhouses in medieval Europe. That doesn't line up with my anticipation. Let's take a closer look at C. So it says the word that's getting me is concedes. The fact that all people didn't have access to public bathhouses should sort of go against something else. If it's a concession, you're saying, even though this is the case. Let's see. According to historian Eleanor Janega, most medieval towns in Europe had at least one public bathhouse. Okay, most medieval towns had at least one public bathhouse. So it does make sense that she would want to concede that not all people had access. When it says most medieval towns, it gives you the idea that there's a lot of people who have access, but then they have to let us know that these are town dwellers. So there's a lot of people who are living outside of these medieval towns who don't have access. So it matches my anticipation, and after looking a little bit closer, it makes sense as well. So my answer is C. All right, we got another underlined portion. And this sentence actually starts at the beginning, just a really long sentence, but let's see if we can still be a little bit lazy. Scholarly accounts of the Chicano movement, and then we have this huge chunk of non-essential information. How do I know? Because there's a dash sandwich. Scholarly accounts of the Chicano movement tend to focus on the most militant, outspoken figures in the movement, making it seem uniformly radical. Okay, it is giving us a reason why scholarly accounts of the Chicano movement might have seemed radical, like why it seemed like a radical movement. And that reason is it focused on really radical people in the movement. So that is my anticipation. I'm going to actually write down my anticipation so I don't forget, because I said scholars focused on radical members of movement. It presents a trend in scholarship on the Chicano movement that the text claims has been reevaluated by researchers in light of Herrera's work on the movement's participants. So the trend would be scholars focusing on radical members. That part sounds true. So I'm going to hold on to this, and I'll look in more detail if I need to in a second. But if I can eliminate these other answers, then I'll just choose it. It identifies an aspect of the Chicano movement that the text implies was overemphasized by scholars due to their own political orientations. All right. This is also matching my anticipation. Overemphasizing radical members. It describes a common approach to studying the Chicano movement that obscures the ideological diversity of the movement's participants. All right, so these are actually looking pretty similar so far. So I want to look a little bit closer at the wording here. Tend to focus on the most militant, outspoken figures of the movement. Scholarly accounts tend to focus on the most militant, outspoken figures. So identifies a common approach to studying the Chicano movement that obscures the ideological diversity of the movement's participants. That also fits. This is a tough one because so far they all fit. Specifically, ideological diversity would speak to radical versus not so radical. So C feels really good. Let me just read through D and then we'll start eliminating. It summarizes the conventional method for analyzing, which text suggests creates a misleading impression of the effectiveness of neighborhood institutions. Okay, D is out. D doesn't match what I was saying. The other three, however, kind of do. I like C the best because of the ideological diversity bit, but let's take a closer look at A. So A, the big thing that's being said afterwards is that the text claims it has been reevaluated by researchers in light of Herrera's work. Let's see if that's true when we look into the rest of this. Herrera has shown, however, that if we shift our focus towards the way movement was manifested, we see participants espousing an array of political orientations and approaches to community activism. Herrera has shown. This says that it has been reevaluated by researchers because of Herrera's work. It doesn't say that here. It just says that Herrera's work shows that this is not the case. It doesn't mention any other researchers, so you can get rid of A. So identifies an aspect that the text implies was overemphasized by scholars due to their own political orientations. Due to their own political orientations, it does not say that. It just says that they focused on the most militant, outspoken figures. It doesn't say why. So this is an inference that's being made. We do not want to go with an inference because it's not actually in the text. B is out. The one that I like, C, is the only one that's left. So that's going to be our answer. All right, to round off our craft and structure, we're going to look at one cross-text connection question, aka when you have not one text, but two. And I do like to start with the question on these as well. That's kind of a pattern you're going to notice in the English section. Start with the question. Based on the text, how would author of text 2 respond to overall argument presented in 1? So I am going to start by figuring out what the overall argument is in text 1. Graphic novels are increasingly popular in bookstores and libraries, but they shouldn't be classified as literature. Okay, overall argument. Seems like I already have it. Argument here, I'm just going to write this. Graphic novels are not literature. How would the author of text 2 respond? Let's see what the author thinks. Graphic novels present their stories through both language and images. Without captions and dialogue, readers would be unable to understand what is depicted in the illustrations. The story results from both text and image. Moreover, Alison Bechdel's Fun Home and many other graphic novels feature text that is as beautifully written as the prose found in many standard novels. Therefore, graphic novel... I really wish I would have started with the last sentence, but boom. Graphic novels qualify as literary text. So basically, we're looking for a complete disagreement. The author of text 2 would say, no, they are literature. By asserting that language plays a more important role in graphic novels than author 1 recognizes, maybe. By acknowledging that the author of text 1 has identified a flaw, no. By suggesting that the storylines of certain graphic novels are more difficult to understand, no, it just says that they're kind of on par. By agreeing that most graphic novels aren't as well crafted, no. So it's got to be A. And we did see a mention of, language playing an important role as well. So there we go. Starting with central ideas and details. According to the text, what was surprising to scientists studying the activity? All right. So these ones, we are trying to pinpoint a detail. So this is where reading the question can save us a lot of time. We're looking for something that was surprising. And I'm honestly just going to kind of skim through the text and try to find that. So it popped out to me. This discovery was surprising to scientists. So the data show that the Mars quakes all started from the same location. So the fact that they all started from the same location, and that's what I'm going to look for in my answer. The surface has been rising, no. 4 different types, no. Less data, no. All quakes started from the same location. Boom, got my answer. Number 12 here, also going to be a detail question. What do some historians suggest about the civilization? And again, I'm just skimming the text. I'm looking for language that could mean historians suggest. In this case, I literally get the words, some historians suggest that Maya mathematicians inherited it. Okay, what is it? The use of zero. So basically, they suggested, and I'm seeing that in the previous one, the use of zero. So they suggested that Maya mathematicians inherited the use of zero from Olmec civilization. That's my anticipation. Maya civilization acquired the use of zero from That's literally what I said. Maya civilization respected. Maya civilization was highly secretive. Maya civilization tried to, no. So again, boom. Let's look at a main idea question now. For a main idea question, sadly, I won't be able to skim. I'm going to have to read the whole thing and kind of come up with what I think the main idea is. Elizabeth, I'm not going to try to say that, has identified a negative correlation between the share of developing countries' economies derived from natural resource extraction and those countries' receipts of foreign investment. Okay, negative correlation. So let's unpack this a little bit. Negative correlation means as one goes up, the other one goes down. Basically, they don't line up. So we see economies coming from natural resources or natural resource extraction and receipts of foreign investments. So basically, if there's more natural resource extraction, there's less foreign investment and vice versa. Okay, so the second part here, natural resource industries boom bust cycle. I don't know what that means, but I'm going to say boom bust makes unstable. And that's why we see that correlation. Okay, and those two things together. So I'm looking for that negative correlation because of this boom bust cycle. Although it may seem surprising that foreign investment declines in developing countries as natural resource extraction makes up a larger share of those countries' economies, that decline happens because resource extraction requires initial investments too large for foreign investors to supply. Too large doesn't really line up with the boom bust thing that I mentioned, so I'm going to get rid of A. Although developing countries tend to become less dependent on foreign investment, it wasn't about them being less dependent. It was just the fact that they were getting fewer investments when they were doing more natural resource extraction. So B is out. Although one might expect that foreign investment would increase as natural resource extraction makes up a larger share, the opposite happens because heavy reliance on natural resources can lead to unattractive conditions. I don't know what the boom bust cycle is, but maybe it's those unattractive conditions. So let's keep that one for now. Although foreign investors tend to avoid initial investments in natural resource industries in developing countries, foreign investment may increase significantly as those industries stabilize. Okay, it doesn't talk about them eventually increasing. So I'm going to say D is out. Now, by process of elimination, I have C, but let's be careful here. I want to double check. The opposite happens because of heavy reliance on natural resources can lead to unattractive conditions for investors. Let's see if that is the boom bust. Boom bust cycle can destabilize local currencies and increase developing countries' vulnerability to external shocks, creating levels of uncertainty to which foreign investors are typically averse. Unattractive conditions for investors. It's vague, but it matches. External shocks and levels of uncertainty are unattractive conditions for investors. And I'm going to choose C as my answer. That was a tough one, but there you go. Next up, let's do a couple of command of evidence questions. We'll do one sciencey one and one not so sciencey one. So, which choice effectively uses data from the table to complete the statement? So the first thing I like to do for these is to figure out what would effectively complete the statement. And it says, among candidate species for de-extinction, this problem would be especially concerning for the blank. Okay, so what is the problem? Longer it's been extinct, less likely there's a suitable habitat. So basically, concerning for the animal that's been extinct the longest, right? And I don't know what that animal is unless I look at this chart that they gave us. So I'm going to go ahead and look at the chart. We're looking for the one that's been extinct the longest. 11,000 years ago is certainly more than 6,400 years ago. So it would be the saber-toothed cat. And that's B, and that's our answer. All right, moving on to a non-sciencey one. Okay, so basically it's saying which quotation illustrates the claim. So I want to focus on the claim. And it says, the speaker describes having contradictory feelings while experiencing the sights and sounds of a spring day. So the claim is that this is what the speaker is doing. So I'm looking for contradictory feelings while experiencing sights and sounds of a spring day. Through primrose tufts in that sweet bower, the periwinkle trailed its wreaths, and 'tis my faith that every flower enjoys the air it breathes. I'm not seeing any contradiction there. Like, we're definitely getting those spring vibes from the sweet bower and the periwinkle and all that stuff, but no contradictory feelings. The budding twigs spread out their fan to catch the breezy air, and I must do all I can that there was pleasure there. So again, I'm not really getting any contradictory feelings. I must think that there was pleasure there. The do all I can bit is kind of throwing me off, but I'm not getting any sense of contradictory feelings. The birds around me hopped and played, their thoughts I cannot measure, but the least motion which they made, it seemed a thrill of pleasure. Yeah, here it just seems like the speaker is like looking at birds and thinking, oh man, they're having a good time. I hope D works because I've gotten rid of these other ones. I heard 1,000 blended notes while in a grove I sat reclined in that sweet mood when pleasant thoughts bring sad thoughts to the mind. There we go. Okay. Pleasant thoughts, sad thoughts, contradiction. Thank goodness. My answer is D. All right, let's get a couple of inference questions out of the way here. And these are always going to be the ones that say which choice logically completes the text. Unfortunately, you're going to need to read the entire thing a lot of the time. The Younger Dryas period was a period of extreme cooling from so many years ago in the Northern Hemisphere. Some scientists argue that a comet fragment hitting Earth brought about the cooling. Okay, that seems important. So a comet fragment is one of the arguments. Others disagree, partly because there is no known crater from such an impact that dates to the beginning of the period. In 2015, this team detected a 19-mile wide crater. The scientists who believe an impact caused the Younger Dryas claim that this discovery supports their view. Okay. However, their team hasn't yet been able to determine the age of the crater. Therefore, the team suggests that, well, if we don't know the age of the crater, I would say they should suggest that we either find the age of the crater or that we don't have enough evidence to support the comet fragment thing. It can't be concluded that the impact that made the crater was connected. That's true. It can't be determined whether a fragment could make a crater. No. Scientists have ignored the possibility. No. The scientists who believe the impact Younger Dryas have made incorrect assumptions about. No. So yeah, A, we don't know yet. It can't be concluded. Might as well just do this one next door here. In 2016, biological anthropologist and her team investigated evolution of the appendix, an intestinal organ that's present in some mammals, including humans, but is generally thought to have no function. They studied a bunch of mammals, found that the appendix has emerged independently across multiple lineages in separate instances. Okay, so basically has emerged independently. So it's showing up in all these mammals. Hasn't disappeared after emerging in different lineages. Moreover, the team determined that the species with the organ tend to have higher concentrations of lymphoid tissue, which supports immune responses. The organ the appendix is attached to. Therefore, the team hypothesized that the appendix likely blank. The fact that it emerged independently and that it is connected to something which supports immune responses, I'm going to say actually is important, has something to do with our immune system. Was once present in many non-mammal species but has since disappeared. No, it said that it's appeared independently. Has been preserved in certain mammal species because it benefits their immune systems. Yes, I said that. Will emerge in a greater number of mammal species because it may serve a necessary function in the immune system. Will emerge? No, we're not trying to predict the future here. Produced higher concentrations of lymphoid tissue in mammals in the past. No, that was just one little detail when they talked about the lymphoid stuff. I don't remember what it was, but it was a detail. So B is my answer. All right, one more. This one should be a little bit more challenging. The practice of logging is often thought, and you might notice I'm skipping a lot of stuff. If I see parentheses, if I see 2 dashes, I'm going to skip stuff because it helps my brain concentrate. The practice of logging is often thought to be at odds with forest conservation. However, a massive study in forest management and preservation spanning a bunch of hectares and organs, whatever, calls that view into question. Again, I'm skipping details in my mind. So far, results of the study suggest that forest plots that have undergone limited logging may be more robust than plots that haven't been logged at all. Okay. So that seems to be the main idea. So basically, if there's been a little bit of logging, they're more robust. So there's more trees than plots that haven't been logged at all. So it would suggest maybe that a little bit of logging is actually good for forests. Logging may be useful for maintaining healthy forests, provided it's limited. Yes. Other forest management strategies are more effective. No. As time passes, it will be difficult to know whether it has benefits. No. The best way to support forest health may be to leave large forests entirely untouched. No. So, yeah, hey, not sure why that was in the harder section. That one was actually pretty easy. All right, moving on to my favorite, some standard English conventions. Ming became the 13th Secretary General of the Association in January 13th, making blank the first time the organization would appoint a Vietnamese leader. So this is a pronoun question. We have a bunch of pronouns, and the easiest thing to do is to figure out, are we singular or plural? So this is an event. This thing that happened where Ming became the 13th Secretary General was an event. An event is one thing, so I'm going to get rid of plural answers. These, those, some. My answer is this. A decade later, Land blanked his technology to invent the world's first instant camera. A decade later sounds like we are in the past. It's telling a story. A decade later, Land used his technology. Yes. A decade later, Land to have used his. No. Land to use. No. No. Okay. It's A. Using one of these non-copyrighted songs, blank a creator won't lose advertising revenue. So we have a verb tense, and I like to find the subject. So the subject is using one of these copyrighted songs. Kind of a weird subject, but we could simplify this into a pronoun. Using one of these non-copyrighted songs is like, it's an action. It's something that happens. Doing this thing. So we could say it. It is an event, singular. It are insuring, no. It have insured, no. It insure, no. It insures, yes. So again, change it to a pronoun. We're looking for singular or plural. It's singular. This is the only singular answer. And if you're not sure, you can literally just look at the answers. There's usually only one that works. So even if we didn't know that this part that's underlined was singular, we could see that all three of the other answers are plural. The odd one out is more often than not going to be your answer. In fact, let's play with that. We have a bunch of verbs. We have represents, singular. He represents. He has represented. He was represented. They represent. The odd one out is they represent. And sure enough, we have such iconic references. Plural. Plural. Boom. And notice for these, I'm really trying to be lazy and just focus on the sentence with the blank space, unless I need to look further. When you place your hands between the two antennas, the pitch will shift. So here, if we look at our answer choices, we're trying to figure out if we want to use apostrophes or not. So if we have hands apostrophe, that should mean that the hands possess something. Hands between. Do you have a between? Does anybody possess a between? No, between is not a noun. So any answer that has hands possessive is out. This has plural hands possessive. Plural hands possessive, also out. It has to be B. All right, let's find some more challenging ones in one of the challenging sections here. Clear glass, which is classified as transparent, allows all light to pass through wax paper, which is classified as translucent. All right, so here we're looking at punctuation. Clear glass, I'm going to get rid of this to make things easier on myself. And, you know, when you're going through, you can just sort of mentally ignore this. I just want to show you what I'm choosing to mentally ignore. Clear glass allows all light to pass through wax paper, which is classified as translucent, allows only some light to pass through. Oh my goodness. Okay. Something weird is happening here. The way that I just read it, it doesn't work, right? Because we have which is classified as translucent, allows only some light to pass through. Because I was reading it like there's no punctuation, so I'm going to know immediately that B doesn't work. Let's go through the answers and just see what's going on here. Clear glass allows all light to pass through, comma. Wax paper, which is classified as translucent. Okay, so now I'm understanding what happens. We have clear glass allows all light to pass through, period. Wax paper allows only some light to pass through. That's another sentence. We don't have a period, but what acts just like a period? You're right, a semicolon. C is our answer. Using natural debris, such as dried leaves, man-made trash, such as plastic bags. Okay. I'm immediately recognizing that this is the semicolon rule that is somewhat new to the digital SAT exam, where basically we can have a list and we can use semicolons to separate items in that list, as long as the items in that list have additional punctuation in them. Usually, the additional punctuation is, more commas. So we can see here we have natural debris such as dried leaves. So that's the first item in our list. And there's a comma that is a part of that item. Man-made trash such as plastic bags, comma, which is part of that item. And more traditional art supplies such as glue tree. So again, we have that comma. And I'm circling the commas because this is what's needed for us to justify using semicolons in our list instead of commas in our list. So basically, I want a semicolon. And where do I want the semicolon? I want it right there after leaves. Only 5 of these dances are included in the ballroom dance competition, however. Rumba, samba, cha-cha, all this stuff. Okay. So I'm pretty sure I know what's going on here. We're going to have only 5 of these dances are included in international ballroom dance competitions, however. That is a full independent clause, but we have a list afterwards. What's really good at introducing lists after an independent clause? Colon. My answer is A. All right, we'll do one more of these. When it comes to their diets, goats are notoriously blank. When it comes to their diets, goats are notoriously indiscriminate. They will devour all. Okay, so if we had and, they're notoriously indiscriminate and they will devour all kinds of shrubs and weeds, leaving. So all this is being added on to the end of the sentence, but we could think of this as a full sentence, right? Goats, we'll get rid of the introductory phrase too. Goats are notoriously indiscriminate and they will devour all kinds of shrubs and weeds. We have 2 full sentences and we have a coordinating conjunction here, and we need a comma before that and. A doesn't give us that comma, so A doesn't work. B, we don't have and, but we still have 2 full sentences. Goats are notoriously indiscriminate. They will devour all kinds of shrubs and weeds. That is a comma splice, aka a comma trying to act like a period. Not okay. C doesn't even do the honor of giving us a period. C is out. It has to be D. And let's talk about the colon for just a second. So I said that colons are really good at introducing lists. They're also really good at giving examples. We have goats are notoriously indiscriminate. Here's an example. They'll devour anything. That's the definition of being indiscriminate, right? They don't care. They'll eat whatever. So we have an example. All right, let's finish up the English section with expression of ideas. That is transitions and rhetorical synthesis. First one is a transition. Historians agree that jazz pianist Jelly Roll Morton was exaggerating when he claimed to have invented jazz music. No one can deny that Morton's. Okay, so they agree he was exaggerating. No one can deny that his innovation helped shape jazz as a genre. So he didn't invent it, but he did help shape the genre. So I'm looking for like but or however. Therefore, in the second place, that's a weird one. In other words, though. Though is the same as however and the same as but. And for these, I do like to try and just read the sentence before and then the sentence with the blank space. This technique involves smothering the flame surrounding the clay vessel. The vessel takes on a shiny black hue. So it seems like you do this thing and then the vessel takes on a shiny black hue. So I'm looking for like, that's what happens after you smother it. On the contrary, no. For example, no. Previously, no. As a result, yeah. We do this thing, and because of that, as a result, it takes on a shiny black hue. According to Duverger's law, according to Duverger, what is that name? Duverger's law, countries with a single ballot majoritarian elections for single member districts tend to polarize. And okay, according to this, these parties tend to, I'm focusing on the meat and potatoes here, at least what I see is the meat and potatoes, tend to polarize into two-party systems, wherein dueling political systems constantly dominate. So basically, you have all these two-party systems that dominate. Countries with proportional representation electoral systems, these other systems, tend to support multi-partyism. Okay, so we're looking for a contrast. These countries have two-party systems. These other ones have multi-party systems. So conversely, and that one just jumped out at me. I do like to eliminate, but I saw conversely because that's literally like, opposite of this is this other thing. All right, let's do a couple challenging ones. The liquid metals on Earth's core circulate constantly. The circulation generates electrical currents that flow between the north and south magnetic poles. These currents create a barrier around the Earth. Okay, so it seems like it's just continuing to explain what these currents do. So I'm looking for like, it could be like as a result, not quite as a result, but like the next step or like here's more information. Let's look at my options here. In turn, that actually makes a lot of sense because it says they flow between the poles, and then in turn, like as they do this, they create a barrier around the Earth. And then these other ones, likewise, no. Nevertheless, no. In reality, no. So in turn is going to be my answer. Again, in turn, it would be first we're talking about liquid metals circulating, and that creates electrical currents. In turn, the electrical currents create this other thing. So it's like this creates this, in turn, this creates this. Then the site is carefully dug, and any artifacts found are recorded and mapped onto the site grid. The artifacts are removed, cataloged, and analyzed. This seems like we have just an order of things. Then, so what's the first one? After permissions granted, a dig begins, then, and we should have finally. That was easy. What is this doing in the hard section? Okay, so this is a semicolon, which is basically a period, so I'm still going to start from however here. However, the differences between the first edition and the 1908 edition are extreme, even by James standards. Some critics regard the two editions as two different novels altogether. Okay, so it seems like it's giving an example, so we should have some sort of an example intro. By contrast, not an example intro. In fact, yeah. Nevertheless, no. In other words, no. In fact is a way to give an example, especially an emphatic example, an example that emphasizes what was just said. All right, finally, rhetorical synthesis. And these are super easy. We are going to ignore the notes, go down, and find what the goal is. The goal is to identify the real author of Adam Bede. Cool. The real author was Marianne Evans. That seems to do it. George was widely assumed Nope. The title indicated nope. Woman who had a pseudonym. Okay. A woman who had used a pseudonym to conceal her identity later revealed herself as the real author. So A and D both are identifying the real author. However, D doesn't even say her name. It just says that she used a pseudonym. So it's A, because A actually says it was Mary Ann Evans. Boom. See, told you those are easy. Let's just skip to some harder ones so you can see that even the harder ones are not so bad. All right, we're going to do the same thing. We want to emphasize the similarity between the code talkers. U.S. soldiers who are members of the Choctaw Nation in Oklahoma use their native language. No, that's not talking about both. We want to identify a similarity. In World War II, one group of Navajo soldiers was known. Again, we're not talking about both. Both the code talkers from Choctaw and the Navajo code talkers transmitted coded military messages in the soldiers' native languages. That does seem to emphasize a similarity. The Choctaw code talkers, not the Navajo code talkers, served. Okay, so it's C. See? Don't even need to look at the notes. And this is in the hard section, mind you. So they're really easy if you know what to do. All right, we'll do one more to finish up here. And then this one, we want to contrast number of meteorite falls with number of meteorite finds. So contrast falls with finds. A meteorite was observed falling to Earth before being recovered is known. That's not talking about the number. Meteorites found on Earth are divided into two categories. Nope. There have been about 1,200 recorded meteorite falls. Nope. Because it's not mentioning the finds, only the falls. While there have been 1,200 falls, there have been over 60. Yeah, so that's the only one. And again, this is in the challenging section. It's not challenging. You just need to find out what the goal is, choose the answer that does that. We don't care about the notes. All right, before we get into the math section, just a quick tip for you. Go to Desmos.com, go to Math Tools, and then you'll see all these different calculator options. Click on Test Practice, and then you can choose the digital SAT. Boom. That way you know for sure you're using the proper calculator, but it's the graphing calculator. And also, do not forget to go to your reference page if you're practicing and it's not Blue Book practice. And remember to use this reference page if you ever come across a geometry problem and you forgot a formula. All right, solution to this is going to be where they touch. This point right here, which is 4, 5. Boom. For word problems, even if they're short, I like to go to the last sentence and get the main question. If no members leave the film club, how many total members will the film club have 4 days after the first semester? That seems to be the main focus. So how many 4 days after the first day? On the first day, it has 90. And then each day after the first day, 10 members join. So we have a constant rate of change. 10 members are joining. 10x. We started with 90 plus 90. So this is a linear equation. And if it's going to be 4 days, then that would mean x is 4. So basically 10 times 4 is 40. 40 plus 90 is 130. Boom. What is the y-intercept? The y-intercept is where it touches the y-axis, which is 8. So 8, 0. Remember the first one is x. 0, 8. That's D. Solution to the system of equations. So system of equations, you can certainly use your graphing calculator, but this one is so easy. It's early on. It's telling us what R is. We just have to plug R in. Basically, we're just going to plug in that 3 for R. S plus 7 times 3 equals 27. 7 times 3 is 21. S, and let's actually subtract that 21 from both sides. S equals 6. And then it says the solution is RS. They already told us R is 3, so 3, 6. What's the best description? Basically linear versus exponential, increasing versus decreasing. So we have definitely linear because we can see that we're adding 1 every single time. And then is it increasing or decreasing? It's increasing, so increasing linear. What is the value of x in the solution again is where they touch. The value of x is 4. What is the value of x minus 7? All right, what I like to do is try to just get x minus 7 if possible. So first of all, let's move everything over to the right side. So x is on the left side. So 4x will add 28, right? So negative 24 plus 28 would equal 4. Then x equals 1. Well, at this point, basically 1 minus 7. Okay, 1 minus 7 equals negative 6. If this day has 670 minutes of daylight, how many minutes of non-daylight does it have? Okay, x plus y is number of minutes of daylight. All right, so which one is 670? X and the number of minutes of non-daylight. Okay, so x is the minutes of daylight. So basically, it's just one plus the other. So 670 plus y equals 1440. We're going to subtract 670 from both sides. I'm going to grab my calculator. 770. Boom. What is the slope of line J? All right, so it's telling us about line K, and it's saying line J is perpendicular. Well, that's easy. Perpendicular means it's going to be the inverse slope. I think that's the correct term. Basically, it's the negative reciprocal. So y equals mx plus b, m being 7 is our slope of the original. So the reciprocal would be 1 over 7. And then we add a negative. So it should be negative 1 over 7, aka b. So for this one, it tells us it's a linear relationship. We need to choose the equation that works. The answer choices aren't in a format I love. I prefer slope-intercept form, but we can basically just plug in these numbers and see if they work or not. So let's test out A. Number of cars should be 3. So basically it would be 55 times 3 minus P minus 174, and that should equal negative 9. Let's see if that works. That does indeed equal negative 9. Just for good measure, let's test the others. All we have to do is switch out the numbers. So 5 and then 284, also negative 9, 10, 559, boom. We've checked, we are golden, it's A. Again, the power of using your calculator. What is the range? The range is the biggest number minus the smallest number. It looks like they put it in order for us. Very sweet of them. 52 minus 23, 29. Which of the following is the best estimate for the number of employees at the company who are enrolled in exactly 3 professional development courses? So 3 courses, exactly 3. And it also says best estimate, so if it's not perfect, that's fine. Now let's see what's going on. 20 employees selected at random from 400. Okay, so basically it's a ratio, right? Because we're saying 16 out of 20 were enrolled in exactly 3 courses, but we're trying to figure out the best estimate of all of them out of the full 400. So we could write it like this, right? A little cross multiplication here. 20x, equals, all right, and I'm going to go ahead and grab my calculator. 16 times 400, 6,400, and divide that by 20. Well, if we divided it by 10, it would be 640. And then if we divided it by 20, it would be 320, right? If Brian continues at this rate, how much money will he have in 9 weeks? Well, let's see. He gets 2/5 of 215 every week. Okay. So basically we want to start by 2 over 5 times 215. And I'll just throw that into my calculator because I can. 86. 86 times 9. We're just going to throw that in as well. 774. So our answer is 774. What is the median? The median is the middle number. So what we can do is we can start crossing off From the biggest and the smallest. The biggest is 18, goodbye. Smallest is 4. New biggest is 10, goodbye. Smallest is still 4. The new biggest is 6. The smallest is still 4. And then we have 2 numbers left. We take the average. The average of 5 and 5 is 5. So our answer is 5. Which of the following could be an equation for data set F? It's specifying data set F, so I'm going to double check the beginning to make sure that this is data set F. And we see that it is in fact not. It is data set E. Data set F is created by multiplying the y-coordinate of each point by 3.9. So basically we want to say y times 3.9 is going to get us to the data set we're looking for. And then all of these are, in slope-intercept form. They just stuck the y-intercept in front instead of at the end. But let's check the y-intercept first. It looks like the y-intercept here is 12, which means if we multiply by 3.9, it's not going to be 12, so it's not C or D. And then we need to look at the slope. So what is the slope going to look like? I could do the slope formula here, change all the y-coordinates and mess with that. Or I could just plug in the equations to Desmos and see which one matches. I think I'm going to use Desmos because I'm kind of a lazy guy. So the first one is y equals 46.8 plus 5.9x. All right. And let's look at a point that's easy to spot here. So we have 2. These are going up by 2. So this would be like 2 and then roughly 15. But then what's 15 times 3.9? Basically 15 times 4, it should be close to 60, right? And these are pretty different, so I think we're okay guesstimating here. So we're looking for something close to 60 at the 2 mark. All right, so I can already see it here. We have 1, 2, and it's getting close to 60. It's up to 59, pretty much. So that's our answer. A. What statement is true? Now, even here, I'm skipping to the main question because basically the first part, whenever you have one of these types of diagrams, is just saying it is what it looks like. So we can tell that these are parallel. It's just letting us know that these are parallel. And we can tell that this is intersecting both lines, but it's telling us that. So normally I'll skip that. Anyway, we can just go through and eliminate whatever's not true, right? Value of x is less than 145. No. These are vertical angles. Vertical angles are congruent, so x actually is 145. So that's not true. That's not true. It's C. What is the height of the cylinder? All right, they're telling us about a cylinder. Anytime you have geometry, I definitely recommend drawing. So we're going to draw this beautiful, beautiful cylinder here. And the volume is 432. The area of the base, we'll call this the base. Area of the base is going to be 24. What is the height? So we could use our cheat sheet if we don't remember, but basically the area of the base times the height is going to equal the volume. So we could say 24 times something equals 432. Divide by 24, 18. I'll be darned, there's 18 right there. What is the length of the diameter of the circle? Okay, this one I think we're really going to have to see what's going on so that we can kind of visualize it. It says a rectangle is inscribed in a circle. The corners are going to be touching. It's going to be as tight a fit as possible. So to visualize this, let's get ourselves a circle. Maybe change the color to something other than white so we can actually see it. A rectangle is inscribed inside a circle. And it does say it's a rectangle. I'll do my best. I make no guarantees. All right, so there we go. Such that each vertex lies on the circumference of the circle. The vertexes being the corners here, right? The diagonal of the rectangle, so that's going to be if we cut it in half. Let me actually get another color for this as well. Is twice the length of the shortest side. So basically this is like, we could call it 2x, and then the shortest side would be just x. And I don't know if this looks familiar to you or not, but this is a rule that we'll see on the cheat sheet, I'll just pull it up so you could see it real quick. It's one of our special right triangles. We have x, 2x, which means the other side is x root 3. And then it says the area of the rectangle is 1089 times the square root of 3, which makes sense because we know that the height involves the square root of 3, right? So really, we could just get rid of that, say that the area of the rectangle is 1089. What is the length of the diameter of the circle? The diameter being the diagonal, right? So if x squared equals 1089, what is the square root of 1089? 33. So x equals 33, and 2x is the length of the diameter, so 2x would equal 66, which is our answer. What is the area of EFGH? Okay, so it's telling us that the rectangles are similar. Similar means they have the same proportions. The length of EFGH is 6 times the length of the corresponding side of ABCD. The area of ABCD is 54. So the area is 54. But we have to think about not the area, but the side lengths. So basically, length times width equals 54, right? Now, the cool thing is, it doesn't matter what length and width are. They could really be anything. So let's just decide what we want them to be. 6 times 9 is 54. So let's just say that the area or the length and width of the originals are 6 and 9. And then we know that the length and width of the other ones are going to be 6 times the amount of the first one. So 6 times 6 is 36. 9 times 9 is 81. 36 times 81, I'm going to guess, is 1944 because all the other numbers are too low. I'm not even going to use my calculator because that would be a waste of my valuable time. Now notice that 54 times 6, if we just multiplied the area by 6, it'd be 324, which is a wrong answer here. The reason we can't do that is because when we go up to area, we are multiplying length times width. So the scaling changes after that. So be careful you don't fall into that kind of a trap. That is not our answer. What is the width of the rectangle? All right, so it's telling us about a rectangle. I'm gonna quickly draw one out here. The area is 155. I like to put that in the middle if it's the area. Length is 4 inches less than 7 times the width. Okay, so L equals 7 times the width, 7W, 4 inches less than that, minus 4, right? So basically, we have two of those, 7W minus 4, 7W minus 4, and then the width is the width. So we could just put W's all around. And then we know that the area is the length times the width, right? So we can say 7, I'm going to move over here, 7W minus 4 times W should equal 155. 7W squared minus 4W equals 155. And then we can see this is basically turning into a quadratic. 7W squared minus 4W minus 155 equals 0. And I don't like how big these numbers are, so I'm just going to put that into Desmos. And of course, we're going to change W to X. So 7X squared minus 4W, or 4X, minus 155. It always has to be the positive, and the answer is 5. Power of Desmos. This one, we want to start by drawing this circle that they're telling us about. It's also telling us we have A and B on the circle, where A is Okay, this is HK, so could also just remember that that's HK. And then talking about A, it says point A has coordinates of H plus 1. H plus 1. So basically A is going to be 1 to the right, so a little bit to the right of the center, and K, the y coordinate, plus the square root of 102. Now we're going up the square root of 102, and that's where point A is going to be. And then point B, it doesn't tell us anything. So point B could be, oh wait, no, it does. APC is a right angle. So then from C, here, let's draw this triangle. We want a right angle. So that's 90 degrees. Let's deal with what's going on here, and then we can maybe put in the 90 degrees. So we know that this pink line is the square root of 102, right? But what we need to know is the length of AC. Sorry, I need to write in B here too. What we need to know is the length of AC, because AC starts from the center of the circle, which means it's a radius, and CB goes from the center to the outside of the circle. So it is also a radius, which means if we find AC, it's equal, it's congruent to CB. So how the heck do I find what AC is? Well, that's going to be pretty easy because we already know that one side is the square root of 102. I forgot to label it, but when I made that little arrow, I was saying that's 1 over, right? So the length of this one is 1, and then we can just use the Pythagorean theorem. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. In this case, our hypotenuse is going to be the longest one. We know that the radius is going to be the longest possible value inside of the circle, so it'll be the unknown. A squared will be 1. 1 squared is 1. Square root of 102 squared is 102. So that's going to be 103. So then the square root of 103 is the length of AC. And that means the length of CB is also the square root of 103. And it's asking us the length of AB, which is our hypotenuse. Well, we know that this is 90 degrees here, which means we have a 45, 45, 90, because we have two equal sides, which means two equal angles. And with a 45, 45, 90, you have this rule where, and again, this will be on the cheat sheet if you want to just look at the cheat sheet. We have x, and then x times the square root of 2. So basically, what is the square root of 103 times the square root of 2? And the cool thing is, there's this really cool trick where the square root of A times the square root of B is the same as the square root of A times B. That is to say, we just have to multiply 103 times 2, and that would be 206. What's the positive solution to the equation? Well, there's only one positive solution, x equals 5. Because basically, all the stuff in parentheses, you flip it, those are your three solutions. So x equals -2, x equals +5, x equals -9. How many real solutions does the equation have? Well, if you square something, it's always going to be positive. So that would be 0, because this is negative. All right, what is the value of C? So this is an exponent-based problem, and it looks kind of scary, but if we can get the two sides to look like each other, it'll be less scary. I like the way that the left side looks, so I'm going to try to convert the right side so that it looks more like the left side. So a cube root is the same thing as raising to the 1/3. So basically, 4 to the 7th is what's under the cube root. That is being raised to the 1/3. And then we could apply another rule where we're allowed to multiply exponents that are being raised. Like if an exponent's being raised to an exponent, we could multiply. So basically 4 to the 7/3. And now we have this thing where if two sides of an equation have the same base, we can get rid of the base. So we have a base of 4 and a base of 4. And now we just have 8c equals 7 over 3. We want to divide by 8 to get rid of the 8 on the left side, which is the same as multiplying by the reciprocal. So I'll just times 1 over 8 equals 7 over 24. And we could write that as our answer or decimals. So 7 over 24. Not sure why it didn't show up, but there should be parentheses here. So I'm just going to put those in real quick. Which of the following is the closest to the value of p? We would want to change this 0.84 into 84 over 100, right? That's what it looks like. But we also need to note that this is x over 4 originally, but then it changes to only x. What the heck, right? So let's try to change the original equation so that it is to the x instead of to the x over 4. We could think of it as x times 1/4 or 1/4 x, right? And since they're being multiplied, we could also say this is equivalent to 1.84 to the 1/4 to the x. Because remember, if we're multiplying exponents, that's the same thing as raising an exponent to an exponent. So let's throw this into our calculator, 1.84 to the 1/4. All right, 1.16 roughly. So then 1.84 becomes 1.16. P over 100, how do we get 0.16? 16 over 100. Boom. Answer is 16. All right, this is going to be our last question. We have a system of equations, and it looks pretty scary because we have a constant involved as well. At least I think it looks scary. If you have a scary system of equations, I recommend using Desmos. So let's literally just plug these into Desmos. 48x minus 64y equals 48y plus 24. And ry equals, sorry, I can't see my line there. Okay, there we go. ry, you just type in a letter, by the way, equals 1 over 8 minus 12x. And then it's asking us if we want to add slider r. Yes, we do, because we're trying to figure out what r is. So we can play with r basically like this. Now, what do we want r to be? Well, it says the system has no solution. If you don't know this already, no solution means same slope, because it means they will never, ever touch. The only way that's going to happen is if they have a different y-intercept and the same slope. So I'm just going to go to Desmos and I'm going to mess with r until they have the same slope. Okay, we need to change our slider here. Sorry, the step, it was only going down to 10. So I'm going to go minus 100 and then 100. This is like how far we're allowed to go with our, I'm going to use a whole number for now. Okay. Anyway. Okay, that's actually looking like it has the same slope right there. All right, so we got the same slope here. R equals negative 28. And of course, you could play ring around the rosy and use substitution and whatnot for this, but why would you do that when you can just jump into Desmos and get your answer so quickly? So that's my 2 cents. And with that, you are done. Congratulations on all the hard work you just put in. I'm sure you're sick of studying at this point. So if you want some tips on how you can boost your score without studying, go ahead and check out this video right here.